1 minute. Stand by. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to school committee this evening, Monday, August the 31st. Let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Long Meadow School Committee maintains educational policies that foster continuous improvement by challenging and supporting all children in a safe, caring learning environment, enabling them to reach their highest potential and to become productive citizens. Through effective communication and positive relationships, the Long Meadow School Committee will make informed decisions in the best interest of the students, the schools, and the Long Meadow community. And for the record, the meeting tonight is being recorded for LCTV, aired live, and being live streamed at longmeadow.org. So, I guess we will begin with any visitor comments.
Good evening, everyone. Alex Mitreski, 68 Ellington Street. I just had 3 quick questions for you. One, I guess for you, Madam Secretary, Madam Chair, sorry. Has there been any progress, or have you looked into the sort of discussion we had a few months ago about creating a subscription list where the community can sort of sign up and receive the material from the school committee, such as the agenda and the material? It was just sort of mentioned back in
It was a
June.
request that you had made, and it was decided by the committee at our retreat that we are not taking that on. The agendas and the meeting schedules and the agendas are posted on the town website as required by law.
Okay, I'll just sort of encourage you to reconsider down the line, just because it's sort of like a push or pull. If you have to go always and check your email instead of actually having the email come to you on the phone, it's just much easier to get that information.
I believe
so.
on the Long Meadow Town website now, you can subscribe to have information sent to you when it's posted.
Okay, all right, I'll look into that, thank you so much. The second question I had was, if you could just give a quick answer in terms of how many classrooms were being created at Blueberry after the sort of the post redistrictment this fall, and that's either you or Ms. Mary Doyle, somebody else can answer. It's anybody can answer that, but just wanted to see, I guess the goal was to try to create at least 3 classrooms. I wanted to see if that goal was met. I know there's some classrooms that were met.
All of that information was given at our last meeting in a presentation, and it will be accessed on the website. The PowerPoint, however, Diane has been out for bereavement, so things are slowly getting put up as we're back to school. But yes, room has been created. There are no more than 2 teachers in a classroom in those situations, in
Okay.
special classrooms, so.
So just for the record, my question was, were 3 classrooms emptied or not? So if
We've
you can
gone
just
through that.
Okay.
Ms. Pratt has provided maps, Ms. Doyle has provided an entire presentation at our last meeting. That information is available to the public, so
Do you know it? Do you know how many classrooms?
not offhand,
Okay,
no,
so if
because
there's
I'm
somebody-
focusing on tonight's business.
Okay. And if you can just sort of, just a simple, maybe for next meeting, you can respond just a plain question, how many classrooms were created? The goal was 3, how many were created? and the cost, how was it comparable to what was presented to the community back in April in terms of if we redistrict, this is how much money is gonna be saved. If we don't, this is how much money we're gonna be incurring. We're gonna hire this special ed. I just want just a simple comparison. What was presented to the community was
And-
that
And all of that was
January.
presented at our last meeting in the presentation done by the superintendent. In redistricting, it was never said that we were saving money. Ms. Doyle made that very clear in her presentations through the redistricting committee, and made that very clear through the whole process, that the point of redistricting was not saving money, saving teachers. So I would urge you to either watch our last meeting or to check out the information that will be posted on our website, which has all of the answers to the questions that you're asking. There's no point in our committee revisiting those same questions over and over again. We've got a lot of work to do just in our regular year, plus we are beginning a superintendent search. So being repetitive, I feel, is taking away the time that we need to spend working.
okay. So
And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, it's just I don't know if you didn't watch our meeting last week or were not available, but all of that was presented.
it was difficult to comprehend the answer to the question, and the answer to my question could be just one sentence. Because Ms. Pratt her goal was 3 classrooms. I just want to know just a simple question. How many classrooms were gained? Just a number. 1 or 2 or 3. It's just a number. And in terms of, and I'll find the date from the last presentation that Ms. Doyle presented, and it's not about cost savings, but she did put in numbers to say, if we do not redistrict, this is the cost we're going to incur. If we do redistrict, there's 200 and something thousand, if I recall offhand, that we'll be saving. Not the goal, but it was just portrayed to the community that if we don't redistrict, we're going to be incurring cost. So I just want to compare that. That's all. So just the 2 numbers to be comparable. In 2 sentences, this can be answered. That's all. It's just a simple question, I think, and an answer.
And we'll take that under consideration, but I'm not promising that that will be revisited again.
Okay. Last question, I guess, relevant to tonight's discussion again. So it's just, you have to understand, it's very difficult for the community to ask questions on the topics of that committee's meeting without knowing what the discussion is. I followed the discussion last time, but I couldn't answer. That's why I'm asking the second question in response to that discussion. But I did have a chance to look at the agenda real quick for today. So in terms of crossing guards, would encourage the committee to talk and consider putting crossing guards on Farmington and Ellington. Those 2 are cut-through streets, and I just want to elaborate that a little further. I understand there are other cut-through streets in the neighborhood A where people cut through in the morning, but these 2 are straight, so people can actually garner a lot of speed, especially going from Laurel to the Route 5 side. The speed limit on that road is 35 miles an hour. I live on one of those streets. Speed usually is in excess of 40 to 45 miles. So from going from Laurel to Route 5, somebody can actually really go really fast. So I know that the school committee does not have a jurisdiction over placing the crossing guards. That's something that's being done from the police, but the school committee does have an input, as Ms. Doyle and myself and a few others have talked to the police chief. So I would just urge you to consider putting those crossing guards there so that safety of the children will be preserved.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other visitor comments? Okay, seeing none, any school committee comments?
Yeah, I have one. I just want to thank the committee for your flexibility in meeting at 8 o'clock instead of 7. It's going to lead into the next agenda item, but we had a very productive meeting in the subcommittee, and we're excited to share, our discussions with you. So thank you very much for you being willing to meet at 8.
Any other school committee comments? Okay. No?
I think as far as some of those questions, I don't know the exact answer to the cost one, but I think it's simple enough to answer the classroom one, which as it appeared, we were going to save 3 classrooms. 1 was from the 5th grade moving up, 2 was redistricting. We filled 1, so we saved a total of 2. I think that's the simple answer.
Yeah.
Can I comment?
Yeah, just based on the tour and the maps that Marie Pratt provided, there are at least 3 classrooms that were or 3 rooms that were classrooms last year that are now being used for something else. Like, I think there's a math room down on the first grade hall,
Mhm.
and then there's 2 classrooms, one across from music and one across from art, that last year they were classrooms, and now they're special, right? Like, I don't know
Literacy
exactly which one they are, because I don't have the map with me, but I know I think one's an ELL and one's another. And those are children that we had kind of lumped into classrooms before. And so I think we did gain 3, to the best of my knowledge,
Yeah.
from what I can see.
And I don't,
So I just want to make
one
that,
of
I
them
don't
was because
think
the
it was.
fifth grade left and it was a bigger one. The other ones were because of redistricting. We filled one with a teacher that we had to add back. So I'm just saying, that's the simple answer. That's what we did.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty, I mean, there's resource room things that they did, but to me, when I look at it, I was looking at rooms you could use as a classroom or use as a resource room. And so, in my opinion, when I look at it, we got 3 rooms back.
I'd agree.
And when I toured Wolf Swamp and I toured Blueberry, it just felt so much better to me that they were using the space equally. You know, Center School obviously has more space, but and we toured Center as well. But when I toured them, I just felt it was so nice that the schools were actually using their space. They all had this. It seemed like they all had a similar amount of space that they were using equally. And I think that was one of our main goals, was to have the distribution of students evened out.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah, no,
trying
I'm
to
just.
answer the
yeah.
question that you brought up.
So, yeah, no, I know, I figured, I didn't know if I was allowed to
No,
speak,
and
but
I
I can
don't-
tell you what I saw, so.
The thing is, in terms of cost, I don't think there's any easy way to answer the cost questions because so many other variables have taken place. We've added teachers due to increased enrollment, which had nothing to do with redistricting. So cost-wise, you know, it's like comparing apples to oranges. It's not that we're comparing the same cost factors anymore. It's not the same cost basis. You know, and I think you did a great job of explaining that in last week's presentation, is that these are the positions that had to be added this year from a budget that was developed in December and January because of changes in enrollment and those changes you highlighted last time. So I'm not sure that there's an answer that can be given to say, was the cost in line with what was discussed at redistricting? Because we have over 100 some more students right now than we did in March when we were
And I was very clear to
redistricting.
say it was not about numbers, it was about space. It was never a
Right.
money issue, and whatever numbers we were told, we were very clear that it was about space, not budget.
Right, so that's why I was answering that, you know, to try to go back and calculate those costs, I think is an exercise in futility, because so many factors have changed along the way, and it was very clear from the meetings of redistricting of the superintendent stating, this is not about cost, this is about equalizing the experience and equalizing enrollment.
You know, I would say it would be very easy to figure out the cost myself. I mean, we have basically the exact same number of kids we did last year. I'm not saying that would be a productive exercise, but it wouldn't be difficult to figure out that cost. I mean, I do that type of thing all the time. I'm sure if we asked Mr. Mazza to do it, he could calculate it. I'm not saying we should, because I think, you know, at some point we gotta move on, but it's, you know, sitting in the meetings, I thought it was presented as, there are gonna be savings, or it's gonna cost more if we do it the other way. It wasn't the point of redistricting, but certainly that message was heard. Whether that happened or not, you know, I would certainly debate whether we actually saved any money. I think it probably cost us money. And I do think we could calculate it, but I don't know that that's really gonna make anything any better at this point.
Right, and what is the point of doing that at this time, I guess is my question. Why should we ask Mr. Mazza and Ms. Doyle and those of us who are, you know, trying to put together, you know, be productive and work and move forward, since redistricting is over, what goal does trying to compare those numbers serve?
At the end of the day, that type of comparison is about accountability, and I don't think that that's necessarily something we need to do right now.
Okay. And are there any other school committee comments? Okay, I do have one. As I sent you all in an email this weekend, I apologized for the late notice of the agenda being sent. It made me realize how much I rely on Diane for her assistance. However, with the loss of her father, she was on bereavement last week. Made sure that, you know, with Tom, we got the agenda posted to the town website, which is what we're legally required to do. And I would just ask that members of the community, members of our committee, be understanding of that, realizing that many of us also have jobs outside of this, and to know that the agenda is always found on the town website. As I said when we started the meeting, the FAQs, all of the things that were discussed at our retreat and approved with changes along the way are in the process of getting posted. However, with the start of the school year, it's quite the busy time for Diane, and you know, this certainly wasn't something she had planned on, and we appreciate all that she does. So I would just ask for your understanding of that. So moving along to the agenda items, Michael, would you like to talk about
Yeah.
the superintendent search?
Absolutely. So I outlined at the last meeting the process by which the RFP subcommittee would be working to determine and make a recommendation to this committee. And just to give everybody a reminder of that, the three of us, Liz, Michelle, and I, have been meeting with Chad and Tom to go over the RFPs, the request for proposals. Those RFPs were in response to or the responses were in response, I should say, to an RFP we put out in the middle of August, due back on the 20th. We received 4 responses. Those responses were from Ray and Associates out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, HYA, NESDEC, and Atlantic Research Partners. They were the 4 that had that responded, and so they provided us with outlines of what they plan to do, the timelines, the scope of the work they were going to do, resumes for the people that potentially would be conducting the searches, and a list of references. And through that information, we conducted our technical evaluations, which is part 1 of a 2-part process that the subcommittee followed. Through the technical evaluation, we answered questions ranked 1 through 3, 1 being not advantageous, 3 being very advantageous, 2 being somewhat advantageous, right? Yes. On comparable experience, years of experience, staffing and capability, strategy and plan, search timeline, approach to community, vision or materials and promotions, and references. And just to kind of outline what some of those things are, I think the top 3 were answers that we all got the same. They were ones that you pull the information out of the RFP and you answer it the way you can. Things like strategy and plan, search timeline, approach to community, and materials and promotion, those things are really kind of subject to our own personal opinion about whether or not they were attractive, the materials that they provided, whether we found the approach to community sufficient. Approach to community being interviews with members of the community, stakeholder forums, surveys, the approach that they used to the school committee, the search timeline being whether or not it met up with our timeline, and we were a little bit liberal in how we interpreted that because, you know, they didn't all match up because they're going to present, who we recommend will present us with an actual timeline, but it was, you know, an estimate. Strategy and plan, whether we agreed with it. There are things that we agreed with, things that we didn't. And so, at the end of the day, what happened is that Chad took the 3 scores that we all provided him on all these indicators, and I will find them in this pile somewhere, and he added them together. And we had a discussion. Do you have yours? Can't find it. Somewhere. There's a lot of papers here, Chad.
A lot of papers.
I got it.
Yeah.
I think. I got it. All right, cool. And so this was the first part. The second part, this is the first part we went over today. And so the way that it came out was that Ray and Associates had a composite score of 71. That Atlantic Research Partners had a composite score of 62. HYA had a composite score of 59, and NESDEC had a composite score of 57. So following that, we had discussions about price proposals. And we went over the different proposals, and they came in two parts. The first part is a flat rate fee, which is the basic fee for service that the consultant would charge. And then there's additional expenses, and those additional expenses include travel costs for the candidates and the consultants, advertising. They include things like meals and per diems. They include things like they include a lot of that stuff, quite honestly. I think that was kind of the scope of it. Things like community engagement, developing a survey, recruitment and screening, and then some of the companies charged additional money that was not included in the total additional expenses, like background checks per candidate. Some of them used external firms, some of them did internal because they have the capability to do it. And so, it became, I should also say that during this process, because we asked for proposals, we were not precluded to choose the lowest possible bidder. But we did have to, figure out why we weren't going to choose the most advantageous from a technical evaluation perspective. And we got lucky in that respect, because the recommendation we're going to make tonight is for Ray & Associates. And Ray & Associates had the highest technical evaluation score, and they were the third lowest priced, which means that their total recommendation to us was for their total proposal was for $25,900. They were the second. That's what I meant. The second lowest. Right. That's right. They were the second lowest. Thank you. They were third. Yeah. In my mind, they were third. The way I was organizing in my head. So Ray & Associates was the second lowest. NESDEC came in the lowest, but they also had the lowest total score. And so they were very easy for us to eliminate. After that, we had a real conversation around Atlantic Partners and HYA Executive Search. HYA Executive Search came in the highest, and they also had the third lowest score. So also very easy to eliminate them. And then it came down to Atlantic Partners. And that was a matter of the references. Most of the people who we spoke to gave the companies very positive references. But some of the references for Atlantic were not as positive as Ray & Associates. And I know, Michelle, if you want to speak to some of the references that you got on Ray & Associates.
Yes, I spoke with, I don't have my notes handy, but I spoke with someone from the Pennsylvania, Manheim Township in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, who has used Ray & Associates for a few searches in the last couple of years, and has used them as consultants following the hires, and very, very happy. I spoke with someone from Florida who, again, had a great experience with them, and I don't have my notes on the last reference, but all three were very favorable, and they were very happy with the work.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
What were the prices
Yep.
for the four?
So Ray & Associates came in at $25,900 for a total flat rate plus additional expenses. Atlantic Research Partners came in at $30,450. HYA came in at $31,500, and NESDEC came in at $16,956.
Is there a limit on these extra expenses?
There.
Or some kind of qualification?
Yeah, so they typically, in most of these, have provided that a disclaimer that all expenses and estimates based on their past experiences, but will only be billed for the expenses we actually incur. And so a lot of the expenses are left up to us to say we want. So where we advertise, for instance, we can decide how much we want to spend on advertising, which would limit the amount that they spend on advertising. We can decide how often we want the consultant here. One of the things that was great about the company we're recommending is that they were the only ones that offered video and telecommunication or commuting sort of service. So all of those things obviously add up, but we can basically say when we work with them and when we sign our contract with them that we don't want to spend more than X on advertising. We don't want to advertise in the Globe or wherever, and that's really where where a lot of the cost is going to come from. That's a little bit more intangible with this company, for instance.
If I could, though.
Yeah.
What do we get for the 25,000?
Great.
I mean, the basic thing.
Yep.
Isn't that, it seems to me that is where you
Yeah.
want to place your ads, and they're gonna do some sifting and sorting out for us.
Yes.
Or are we gonna be billed on top of that for extras?
So
Excuse me.
there are extras that could be included, additional consultant time, and the way that they define additional consultant time is that the flat fee is inclusive of all the services they provide. The only hourly rates that would apply would be for requests above and beyond the scope of the proposal. And so in the proposal, and I might miss some of this stuff, but they talk about, and they go very, very deep into what type of work they're going to be doing, and this is the same for most of them, that they will customize the search process to meet the needs and expectations of the Long Meadow Public Schools, that they will conduct individual board member interviews. So those will be one-on-one conversations with the consultant to assess the board's priorities, goals, objectives, to aid the development of the criteria and qualifications for the superintendent position. They'll work with the board to establish that timeline that we talked about, to discuss the requirements and the salary range for the superintendent position. They will work with the Long Meadow Public Schools staff and those selected by the board in the development of an accurate informational flyer, an online application form. If we want, they will provide a consensus-building mechanism for obtaining inputs from various constituencies, including staff members, other stakeholders, and the board. Other stakeholders, of course, could be community members. They also will provide the board with a cost-saving option, such as using Skype, which will save a lot on air travel. Conference calls, go to meetings, things that can reduce paper costs, because part of the proposal includes copies. They're budgeting 17 cents per copy, so anything that we can do electronically would be probably preferred. They're including $350 for, FedEx. Some of that information could also be done electronically rather than shipped. Faxing, I don't know what we would use a fax for. Recruiting and screening, they notify all the associates to actively recruit potential candidates. So you're really getting a 5-member team of people who are working very diligently to build a community profile, to work with members of the community and the school committee on the screening. You're having them bring these candidates in and present, and they'll spend some time with the community. And then what we like the most is that included in this price, after we hire the superintendent, they'll come back and spend some time with us, some reflection time, to help us continue to build strong relationships with whoever that candidate is. So you really do get a lot out of these people. Quite honestly, NESDEC, which did the search last time, I think has a lot of positives. But based on the information that we had asked for in the bids, they scored the lowest on the technicals. It just so happens they also have the lowest price. And so here we are with the highest scoring technical, but the second lowest price, which is a good position to be in, I think. So that's, we get a lot of bang for our buck on this. And I know, Michelle, you did a lot of you talked to them a lot. Do you have anything to add on some of the services we get since you spoke with the references?
The person from Pennsylvania used their follow-up services and felt that was just extremely useful in helping the transition. And create some goals. I'm looking for the third district that I spoke with. I'm sorry. Someone from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, had nothing but great things to say about his consultant. And Roosevelt, New York, again. I think all of the people that I spoke with worked with the one of the people that was recommended or that was listed in the key associates for the project, which was important to us too. So the references were on the actual consultant that we believe we'll be having. Just very accessible. They provided a great pool of applicants. They were happy with the people that they ended up hiring from the search. The firm was very accessible, met all of their requests for meetings, and they held one-on-one interviews with the school committee members and members of the community. They held a lot of forums, and everything was just, everything they said was just very favorable.
And they make a recommendation. I think this is important because I know we've heard from members of the community who want to participate in this process and on the committee. And they make a recommendation, you know, on who to involve in that process, which I think is helpful. You know, and I know that they, you know, after that, I think, what does it say? It says that the top 2, sometimes 3 candidates or finalists are brought back to the district for an open forum with the public. And they provide a process for, you know, for that, which includes a moderator, which is sometimes nice and definitely helpful. You know, questions from the audience are submitted in writing to ensure the candidates are only asked about legitimate issues related to the position. So they do a really good job to make sure that the candidates who come and are brought forward, you know, have the opportunity to talk about their educational vision. You know, and I know that there are hundreds of searches that go on every year, and, you know, depending on the community, sometimes there are, you know, issues that are pretty divisive that I think they want to try to, you know, really focus on the issues that, you know, shape educational leadership. You know, they do I mean, from everything we've seen and everything we've heard, you know, the engagement of the community piece, which I know is so important in Long Meadow, is really, you know, really done well. You know, and I think that what we've heard throughout the beginning of this process and what we're going to continue to hear is that, you know, people want to be involved. And so whether they're involved on the search committee or whether they have the opportunity to meet directly with these candidates while we get to the point, I think that these consultants are going to make a point of making sure that everybody gets to play a role in this, or at least have some input into it, you know, before this committee makes its ultimate hire.
And I will add, the woman from Pennsylvania that I spoke to, at one point, they did not use a search firm, and so she spoke to that and said how different it was using Ray and Associates and being able to have them vet the candidates for them ahead of time and narrow down what their community really needed versus, and the other thing they helped with was how much they should, you know, list the position for and what they would be getting. They helped with designing a good estimated salary. So she said that all of that really helped them find the right candidate the next time.
Also, what's important, if I can just add, is that before they even get to the point where there's 3 or 4 candidates they bring back for forums, they will offer the community, staff, and parents the opportunity to participate in morning and evening forums that are organized to solicit input via a survey process. And to create dialogue by asking a series of questions about desired characteristics. And then for people who can't make these meetings, they have an online profile survey option with space for written comments, and they compile this. It's part of their 33 desirable characteristics. And they, you know, basically use a quantitative approach based off of input to develop a profile for which candidates are going to be a good match for the community. So from day 1 through, you know, the last day of the process, you know, trying to determine who a good candidate is, you know, honestly has very little to do with this committee beyond the fact that we hire them. It really does come from the people who respond to these surveys, that attend these forums, that help shape the direction of, you know, of the search. So that's, you know, I think that's going to be a really great selling point. So, sorry about that.
I'm concerned about, there's a mention of flying in or paying for flying in candidates. It seems to me a candidate for this position should be willing to pay their own way for the interview. Do we have to pay to bring people in?
If we want them to come in, potentially.
Well, from out of state.
Right.
But, you know, one of the benefits of going with the cheapest one
Is that they're in the state?
is that they're from Massachusetts.
Well,
And would be familiar with Massachusetts educational practices, philosophy, the debates that have been going on. I really don't see how we get any advantage by bringing in some people from New Jersey or Chicago. I really would have to be sold on that.
Yeah.
And Michelle, if I could just add a question onto that, because
Yeah,
I'm guessing
yeah.
you want to respond, were any of their references from Massachusetts
Cambridge.
by chance?
Cambridge used them in '09, and I actually saw that they worked with Springfield and just recently Springfield for a leadership role. I don't think it was a superintendent in
Yeah, he was
Springfield,
internal.
but I just saw it.
He was internal.
Oh, Wareham Public Schools, okay. Recently conducted superintendent search for Wareham Public Schools and the principal search for Boston Public Schools, and previously assisted Springfield Public Schools and Cambridge Public Schools in their educational leadership searches. So the other thing, the reference that I spoke to from New Jersey did mention was that her consultant was very mindful of scheduling his travel around other searches that were near them so that he could help, minimize the costs of his travel. I think they will help find us candidates if we say we really want to find candidates in the Massachusetts area, or that's what they do, So I think in terms of the candidates' expenses who are coming to us for interviews, one thing I can say is that they do the initial round of kind of vetting the candidates for
Right.
us, and they do the interviewing over video. They provide video feed to us of the interviews, so we can actually watch
we can
them, and
watch
the
theirs.
candidate doesn't have to travel to us, so we
Well-
could see, yes, we want them to come.
Right.
Forgive me, but isn't that true of all of them? They're all gonna do that.
Well,
No, they're the only ones that outline specifically that they would provide us with not only video capability, but the opportunity to watch them do their initial screenings. And the other thing I'll say is, and this is true for all four of them, John, is that the scope of the search is completely dependent on the decision of this committee. And so most of these, and I think even NESDEC, include airfare. Because if we decide we want to do a nationwide search, then that's something they have to factor in. If we decide we want to limit it to New England, or limit it to Massachusetts, then that airfare cost is going to go away. So, that really depends on what this board wants to do. They're going to work for whatever we decide we want to do. And that's true of all of them, quite honestly.
I'm going to say, any position in even the finance world, if you're interviewing, if you live in Massachusetts and you're interviewing in Chicago, there's a good chance that if they've called you in as a final candidate, like top 2 or 3 candidates, they're going to pay your airfare for you to fly in. I don't think it's expected for you to fly out there most of the time, unless it says on the job application,
Candidate must pay their own way.
like travel expense. I forgot what the phrase is, but I know, speaking as someone who's, participated, or husband has participated in
Oh.
distances. It's a common thing for you to pay for your candidate that's a 1 or 2 or even maybe a 3 to fly in, if we decide.
If I could, I believe we have not paid for travel for any other candidates. And I've been on a couple of panels for interviewing for principals, vice principals, and of course, we don't do it for teachers.
Right.
I just offer that, and you're correct about the business world. That's a whole other entity completely, but
Right.
it's also a lot of money, so.
Yeah, no, and that's why it's up to us to determine the scope of where we want to go.
I thought you were really referring to airfare for the consultants.
That's part of it as well, but
That's the
when we get,
main cost, probably.
depending on where they come from, and I think the person they're recommending, or would be most likely for them to recommend, I think is coming from New Jersey, so I don't know if there's going to be a flight. There might be a gas reimbursement on that, but, when we get to the point, if there is a candidate far enough out, I imagine we would be flying them in.
Do the consultants, as far as coming here, let's say from New Jersey, are any of those covered by the 25,000? Do they have, we come out at least 3 times
Yeah.
before we start charging you?
They, I think that they have said what is it? They, we just had this conversation in the other room. I think that they budgeted for 6 to 8 visits to the
I think the scope of the
district?
work was 4 to 7.
4 to 7 visits
yes,
to the district?
Community meetings.
So 4 to 7 before we start paying more for them to come out.
Well, their travel, their expenses for their non-incurred costs are estimates. So we'll be billed based on actuals.
But we don't pay for their time.
Correct, not their time. Their related
Right.
expenses.
And did they give you estimates as far as
Yep.
ballpark?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the.
So airfares, they're budgeting 2,000. Ground transportation at 56 cents a mile, which is the IRS reimbursable rate, is $500. Hotel, if needed for stakeholder meetings, so that's making the assumption they're staying overnight. They're budgeting $625. Meals, they're budgeting $150. Car rental, $300, and so the travel subtotal after that is $35.75. And they put the disclaimer in here that expenses would be less if the district utilized a local consultant. So you assume that $2,000, if it's someone from the Northeast, would be shifted into that that ground transportation cost
Yeah.
instead.
With that, Michael, I know you mentioned a lot about the video conferencing
Mhm.
or teleconferencing, not only us watching, their initial
Mhm.
interviews and all, but that's an option for them meeting with us as well.
Mhm. Yep.
Is that how they're keeping travel expenses lower? Because they're
I would imagine.
planning to do a lot of teleconferencing as opposed to physical meeting?
I don't know. I didn't read it as that they were doing more of the interacting and facilitating with us through video. I think that what
Yeah.
I read that to be was in their initial round of narrowing down the candidate pool, they perform interviews and they
Okay.
video those interviews.
Right, I
so that we
understood
can see
that.
those. I think a lot more of this is face-to-face
Yeah.
consultant time. And,
Okay.
and if we all of the firms are accessible to us anytime we need to, ask them questions or, and we could certainly utilize that if we were in a pinch, but I think their goal would be to meet with us. And I
Yeah.
think that's mainly what they laid out in their proposal was,
And that's what I
Contact.
heard from you, but
Right.
then I was hearing something different. I just wanted to make sure.
Clarify,
Because I
yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
that I think everybody would feel more comfortable, seeing a
Yeah.
real person,
No,
not
I think
just
that they-
someone on screen.
no,
I
yeah,
think
no,
that
I
they,
don't.
they are really, it seems to me like they're really good about being accessible, which we also heard from HYA, it was pretty good about being accessible. And so I think my read on it was if we needed them in a pinch, that that was an option for us.
Actually, one of the references said she got a phone call, or she called him at 12 in the morning and he answered, the consultant. So I think they were very, very accessible.
I'm guessing he doesn't want to hear from us at 12 a.m., but.
I don't think we're going to be calling them, but she mentioned that, so.
So that's, yeah. They outlisted some of the places that they would be advertising, which is like the AASA Job Bulletin website, and that factors in some of the advertising dollars that they're talking about. So like, Ed Week newspaper and website would be, they're estimating, and this is a suggested price from the technical evaluation, not the total, not included in the price proposal, but I think they kind of match a little bit. They're saying like $3,500 for, a job listing that would run 3 times in print and twice on the website. But, again, we tailor that to, the needs of the committee, and where we want it. Sue?
So they have offices in Jersey and.
Yep, they're in Lakewood,
Idaho?
New Jersey, and Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
So are they gonna send consultants from New Jersey?
I don't know.
office?
Who
That
do
will
they?
be- That will be a difference in travel.
Yeah, they gave us. One of the people that they included in here is from Lakewood, which is where their office is. This guy, also from. Well, this guy's from Missouri.
But again, I think that was.
Arkansas.
I think, let's say the person coming from Iowa would coordinate his
Yeah.
travel with other districts that he was providing
Yeah.
searches for at the time, so
And we have a team
I
of
know
5
I have to
people.
see, right.
Whereas some of these other consultants that, filled out, that submitted these, that we only had 1 or 2.
So with the team of 5, will we be assigned a single point person? Or will that
Yeah.
always
The way I
change?
understood it. The way I understood it was there would be a lead consultant assigned to Long Meadow,
Okay.
but that the other
But the team would
consultants
be
would be,
helping
yes.
them on their end of the job, but we would most likely always have the same person who we're interfacing
That's the way I
with.
understood it.
Yeah, it says that they have 5 or more consultants on staff that perform the superintendent search and key lead personnel searches, and that they would be. So they have professional contacts. They have associates. They have over 170 associates nationwide. So they have a bunch throughout Massachusetts and the Northeast. And the key associates for the project are the ones that appear to be higher up executives in the company, including the owner and the president. So I think that, I don't think we're going to get these folks necessarily. We
Well,
potentially
no,
could.
and these are the key associates for the project, so
Yeah, it
I don't
says
think
it on
they
the
could-
top.
it-
Yeah, no, I know, but then they also make mention of, the fact that they have other professional contacts throughout the region.
Right, who would be supporting this team, though.
Okay.
The way I read the proposal was, this is our team, because I think they needed to, in the RFP, identify who we would be having. So
Most
that's where
likely,
they
yeah.
said key associates for the project, and this company actually listed more than some of the other companies
Right.
did. But then
Yeah,
they
so
have
there's-
another 170 people that would be supporting them, doing background checks, vetting candidates.
It looks like they have 6 of them, and 3 of them are from New Jersey.
Yeah, I feel bad that everybody doesn't.
Did any of them talk about how they go through to verify that the credentials offered by a candidate are in fact legitimate? That, you know, what process do they use to make sure we're not being conned, to put it bluntly?
That's a good question. So HYA probably outlined the most specifics on that,
Well, that was like on the finalists, but I almost think that,
but they have a pre-screened database, is what
Exactly.
these guys are saying, is that they have, this is Ray and Associates who we're, obviously recommending, and they say that they have, where is it? The firm maintains a very large pre-screened database of top candidates who are interested in new and challenging positions. That, they aggressively recruit and advertise the best candidates who meet the qualifications. So basically what they're saying is they have a very large database of pre-screened applicants. I don't think they went into detail on what the screening process is for candidates. I can tell you that for the finalists for HYA, they facilitate the completion of a comprehensive background check on the finalist by an independent third-party firm, and that background review will confirm degrees attained, any data regarding the candidate on file with criminal or domestic courts, driving record, credit history, print and social media reviews of the candidate, things like that.
That pre-existing pool bothers me a bit. I mean, we're a suburban, affluent district with a college prep modality, if you will. Do they have a category of those folks already? And my question would be, that means someone didn't pick them. So we're gonna go with the ones that weren't picked. It's like the apples in the back row, they didn't get picked. But here you go, Long Meadow. I'm not trying to make a joke out of it. I'm serious about,
I think if.
shouldn't we have it the other way? We tailor, we say this is who we are, and this is who we're looking for. And then they'll steer us towards bin A or bin C,
I think they do both, John. I think
Yeah.
they put out our ads and they say, we're Long Meadow, this is all about us, we're looking for a superintendent. Then people will be submitting resumes to them. They may have a database of their own who are looking for jobs, let's say, and they'll do a good job, and they say, of matching, our district criteria, what we want in a candidate, to what, they know they have and who's applied. And they go through, it did say they check references provided and conduct additional background investigation of the top candidates. So they're doing a lot of that work for us. I think some of a check of candidates' work history is also completed utilizing online resources such as Google, Yahoo, Bing, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media sources. So they do a lot of that screening to make sure that we're not getting,
They're the only ones using Bing.
okay. Bing, right?
In the world, you mean?
I think so.
Well, I don't even know what Bing is,
It's
so.
the Microsoft search engine. Exactly.
Version of Google.
They also gave good example, sample brochures of what, our district's looking for in terms of, and what our district's like, so it's advertising that to the candidates as well.
I think the truth is, at the end of the day, anybody we spoke to who was happy with their superintendent was going to give their consultant a relatively good reference check. We asked them 9 different questions. We agreed on what those questions were. And some of those questions included questions like, what were the issues you had with the firm? What were the issues that you ran into while doing the search? So, we definitely got the answers. A lot of those answers were we didn't really have that many. So. I think at the, and I'll be honest with you, before we just met, I was leaning towards HYA. But, quite honestly, their composite score on the technical was low, and they were the highest priced. So, I think with Ray and Associates, we have, they met what we asked them to meet. We put forward a set of standards we wanted them to meet when they submitted this proposal. They met them all, and they met them highly, quite honestly, higher than anybody else. And, honestly, I know we used NESDEC last time. They came in the lowest. They didn't provide us with any of the information or hardly any of the information we asked for.
Michelle, I've got a question for you. Since you did the phone interviews or the
Of Ray and
checks
Associates, what we did was we
Ray.
each chose a firm and then we split.
So that's why
Yep.
I'm hitting you. Is based on Michael's last comment of your list of 9 questions and one of them being what struggles did you have, what issues did you have? Could you share with us some of what they?
Well, no one said, the question was, was there anything that you wish they had done differently? And each person that I spoke to didn't have anything that they wish they had done differently. They just were extremely happy with their services.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
All right. Any further questions? All right, so the RFP search committee is making a recommendation. I guess I'll take a motion.
Sure. I move on the recommendation of the RFP subcommittee to award Ray and Associates Incorporated the contract to Long Meadow Public Schools to conduct the superintendent search. Is that a good motion? Like that?
I second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. This is so great, we don't have to do roll call vote anymore.
I already made that joke.
Sorry.
Thank you, everybody.
No problem.
Should we do one for old time's sake?
Sure. We could. So all those in favor of the subcommittee's recommendation for Ray and Associates?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll go along with it.
Okay, so unanimous?
We'll call it unanimous.
Unanimous, all right.
So the next step for the committee, hi Tom.
If I could,
Please.
well, now that you've awarded a contract, I think we need to appropriate money so that we have the funds available. So I would recommend the school committee appropriate $30,000 for the search, based on the $25,900 cost. Again, some of those are estimates, and also for possible related expenses to the finalist travel and so on. So
Anywhere in particular you want to come from?
school choice, it's, that's what the fund's been used for, these one-time expenses that were unanticipated. And then I can update you as what the progress is going along in terms of the expenses related to the search. And if we don't spend it all, just revert back to the fund balance in school choice.
All right, so can I have a motion?
I move that the school committee appropriate $30,000 from the school choice fund to the general,
Just appropriate it.
appropriate for the purpose of the
Superintendent
superintendent
search.
search.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
And
Thank
so
you.
the next step is going to be that Chad's going to contact the Ray and Associates and let them know that we awarded them the contract, and they will be here on the 15th. And at that point, we're expecting them to hit the ground running. They're going to show us we're probably going to meet our lead consultant, or maybe all of them at some point. We're going to have probably, an initial timeline to look at. They're going to go over and make their sort of presentation to us on what we can expect from them moving forward. So it should be a fun meeting.
Can we make some suggestions of what they're able to present that evening, or what they should be able to answer that evening? Because I'm thinking, not only the timeline, but things like composition of the committee,
Yep.
of the actual search committee.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, right?
I don't know what you all had already discussed, so I didn't want to be
Not much. We wanted to make sure you guys voted for something
overstepping.
first.
So, do you guys want to just get together or talk to make sure that Chad's got all the
Yeah.
information of
I
what
mean,
we'd
and
like
I
to
would
see?
say, and I don't want to volunteer Jihad to receive a bombardment of emails, but I guess if anybody has specific things they want to see talked about, you know, do you want us to filter that for you, or do you want to handle it?
I don't know if Chad wants to refer them to somebody in the school department or a school committee member, so he's not in the middle of trying
Okay.
to convey your
All right, so what I'll say
desire,
is, if you have specific items you'd like discussed when they come here, please let me know what those things are, no later than, how long do you think they'd need, Chad? For the 15th? What, like the,
would say by the end of this week, Michael.
by the end of this week?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I'm assuming Chad will be in contact with them tomorrow to let them know that they're expected to be here on the 15th. And that then somebody will be in touch with whomever from Ray and Associates about the expectation.
And actually, just to make our job a little easier, Chad, when you speak with them tomorrow, will you ask them what they're planning to present? And then we can make amendments to it? And we'll make sure
Yeah.
that everybody gets a copy of that tomorrow, you know, or as soon as they send it over, I should say.
Now, is there RFP, did they send it to you electronically?
Yeah, I have an electronic
Yes.
copy of it. I can send that out as well.
Are we able to,
Yep.
as committee
Public-
members, use that?
Yeah, and I have hard copies if people would like them. It's a public
Okay.
document, right? Yeah, so
Okay.
if
You
somebody
have
wants
copies of
them,
right?
I have extra copies in my office if anybody would like
Oh,
one.
I meant electronically. Yeah.
Paper.
Okay, great, so if anybody wants a copy,
There's a
get in
lap
touch
on
with
that.
Tom, anybody wants something that they wanna see presented, get with Michael by Friday.
And I'll make sure Chad gets it all. And just to kind of reiterate, when Chad speaks to them tomorrow, let them know, they're gonna let us know what they are planning to present, so we're, you know,
Right.
so we'll submit to them things we wanna see
In addition.
beyond what they are planning already.
Or that they can be prepared to at least answer.
Right, yeah.
Russ?
Maybe kind of one more thing. The presentation, I mean, it would be really great if they kind of come in with what they're proposing for us as opposed to kind of their typical presentation. And secondly, and I think this goes along with something you said earlier, Mr. Fitzgerald, but I would kind of like a breakdown of national search costs separate
Okay.
as much as possible, because I'm not sure I'm really that in favor of spending too much money in the national aspect of it.
Right.
So if they can break that out well for us, so we can figure out what the additional expenses would be.
Yeah, that's no problem. We will, let them know.
All right. Great, thank you, Michelle, Liz, and Michael for all of what you did. I know you did a lot of work in a short amount of time, so it is much appreciated. So, thank you. So moving on to the next item of our agenda, Diane, is
Crossing guard.
crossing guard funding. So Tom, would you like to, or somebody from Finance Sub want to explain?
So Finance Sub, there was a request from the police department for $6,000 for funding an additional crossing guard to be located at Converse and Long Meadow Street. The cost of crossing guards is in the Long Meadow Police Department budget, but since the redistricting occurred after they had to submit their budget request for FY16, they did not include the addition of one more crossing guard. So they approached the superintendent and requested that for FY16, since it was added on after the budget was approved, that the school department funded for this year, and it would be a one-time, one-year expense that for their FY17, they would incorporate the additional cost associated to the additional location being added. So it was recommended by Finance Sub on August 26th, I believe we
Yep.
met. And it was recommended and approved to come out of the school choice fund. So it would not be a transfer of funds to the police department, it would be a transfer of expenses into the school department budget.
So do we need a motion before discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, so can I have a motion?
Make a motion to,
Okay,
I can help you.
$6,000. Let Tom talk and then you say as
I'll
moved.
make the motion. and
I believe the motion was that the school committee, on the recommendation of Finance Sub, appropriate $6,000 from the school choice fund to support the cost of a crossing guard position
At Converse.
at Converse and Long Meadow Street.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Michelle?
Can I just ask, will that, if we fund this and we find that we need to add another crossing guard, will that put us in a situation where we can't add another one?
It may well.
Well, it would have to come back to school committee for an additional vote. So this is right now going to fund one.
Okay.
So-
But are we, I guess, are we draining something by funding what is normally in their budget?
With additional, any additional locations that would be staffed, they don't have the resources, so they would come back to the school department. My guess would be they'd come back to the school department for additional funding. So they budgeted for so many, I don't know how many crossing guards they have. They know the salary for the year, so they budgeted that much. Now that this one was added, they don't have the resources in their budget to pay for it. So if a second or third or fourth one were to be added at some point based on whatever the need that was determined, my guess is that they would probably come back and look for funding from the school department, from the school committee, as they did with this one. Being that it's being added again after their budget's been approved and in FY16 operational, so.
So is there an understanding that that's the reason we're doing it, and next year, if it's still needed, that we wouldn't, it would revert back to their budget, or has there been any discussion about that?
That's my understanding, is that it is funded for FY16 from the school department, but in FY17, again, assuming that additional location would still be staffed, that the cost associated to that salary would be included in the police department budget.
Chief Stankwitz guaranteed me it was a one-time, this year only, that they would ask.
Okay.
John?
As part of our discussion, they were going to investigate whether the conditions at Ellington and Farmington were in need of a crossing guard.
Yes.
And I think we had a concern about methodology, because apparently what they've done here, and if I'm mistaken, someone can correct me, but in the past, going back about 5-7 years, they had a crossing guard at Converse. With redistricting back in the past, that eliminated that position. So all they're doing is going back to what they had. There was no evaluation of the situation. Because
Current
there could not be,
situation.
because there were no students. So there's supposed to be an evaluation now, like within the next 2 weeks. And
Going on right now.
So, did you
I
find
think that was
yeah.
part of our discussion.
Yeah.
At
Is,
Finance Subcommittee. Go
How,
ahead.
you asked how specifically, like, not just sitting there monitoring it, but like, was there going to be a specific way that they were going to monitor the traffic flow so that we
Mhm.
could safely say that it is a safe route for the kids to travel, I
Right.
guess, is
What was the
that was our
methodology?
discussion,
Right. And I know, Marie and I had met with both Chief Stankwitz and Captain Fontaine, and they had explained, in their initial survey of Farmington and Ellington, because of the setback of where the crosswalk is in relation to Long Meadow Street, in respect to the sight lines, meaning the overhanging trees at those two crossings, which that is not a problem, and historic data, which that 10 years ago that there weren't any there. The chief did state that, obviously now driving conditions are different than they were then, but definitely, the police know Converse and Long Meadow Street is an extremely busy intersection, and felt that that was of most importance, and that they would be evaluating further. They didn't give us how they were going to evaluate those other two streets at the time, but both officers who have been in town for quite a number of years and have seen, you know, the changes that have taken place, did not feel that those two intersections were as, held the same concern that Converse and Long Meadow did. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
And they were using observations, they're putting officers on those streets to observe traffic. So that's how they plan on doing it.
Well, the truth is that they won't know what the traffic patterns really are until today, honestly.
Exactly, so it's starting today, and over the next 2 weeks, they're going to do
Okay.
Right.
observations.
And the fact that in the morning, traffic is coming up, as Mr. Matreski had said, they're coming up Ellington and Farmington to make a right-hand turn onto Long Meadow Street. It's not as in the evening where people are traveling down Long Meadow Street and trying to make a left onto those streets to cut back through to Laurel. So again, as a driver, when you're making a right-hand turn, you know, you would be seeing the students who are walking and coming supposedly more easily than if you were making a left.
So can we get an update in, you know, a couple meetings from now? Let's
Most
see what,
definitely.
you know, let's see what the police say, the parents, and figure out how it's going.
Mhm.
Can I just
And that
add
was,
really-
I think our plan from our last discussion was that Chief Stankiewicz was going to give us an update once he had completed their observations.
I just want to add very, very quickly, and I meant to say this during school committee comments. I know the police department and the school committee have heard concerns from parents related to the potential for crossing guards at Ellington and Farmington, and I just wanted to thank them for their response to that. I know that Captain Fontaine did a all-call last night to the entire community, you know, advising the community of. I got the message on my cell phone.
I didn't
All right.
get it,
Well,
but-
they advised the community
I heard Michael's.
of the
I
fact that
didn't get one.
advice. Okay. Well, I got one.
But I do want to,
I think he just called you.
thank you.
You think you just called me? Not to mention the fact they put a light board up
I
at the
did see
corner
the
of
light board.
Converse. You know, these are new traffic routes. People in town are not used to, you know, there being children out on Converse Street like that or along Meadow Street like that. You know, in addition to the fact that I know the Long Meadow News published a notice, so, you know,
Did as well.
you know, so thank you to, you know, Captain Stankiewicz or Chief Stankiewicz now and Captain Fontaine for their attention to this and for continuing to monitor it, because I know that their priority number one is making sure that, you know, our
Everyone.
kids get to school safely and that, you know, that the day starts without incidents. You know, and I
And that's no
appreciate
matter
them.
what school they attend.
Exactly, and I appreciate them continuing to monitor the situation, because if it does become an issue, I know that they'll be responsive.
Absolutely.
I know that I saw them driving down the main streets
Yeah.
today, so I
There
actually
was a
wanted to make
large
a note.
presence.
I forgot to mention that as well, I did, because that was one of the things I had asked him when I was talking to him, was if he could just kind of make sure that they're seen.
Yeah.
And I was gonna
And I
say
saw
even,
them.
Right.
and even driving around after school.
Right.
I was traveling through town between 2 and 3, and there was most definitely a visible police presence, traveling. So thank you to our
Yeah.
officers who are helping us with this.
They
Any-
also had a car parked between Farmington and Ellington on the tree belt, so there was a police officer there in the morning.
Oh, wow.
So, staying next to that.
Okay, so any further discussion on the motion?
You know, in general, I'd be interested in understanding their methodology for the placement of all crossing guards. How do they determine that a particular area should have a crossing guard? I think that's a basic empirical question that should be capable of an answer. Is there any historical component? For example, have there been accidents at any of these junctures in the past? Is that the reason for putting them in?
Well, when they give, when they contact us, or when we get in touch with them about doing the update on this situation, I can certainly ask
Well, I'd
that
be glad to
question
ask
of-
them, but, you know, I'm not trying to surprise them, so if you could
No,
let them
but,
know when something like that is gonna come at them, yeah, I'd be glad to throw the question,
no.
or give the question, not throw it.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. So all those in favor of appropriating the 6,000 from school choice for the funding for 1 year? Any opposed? Okay.
The easiest school committee's ever handed money over.
All All right, and then the third item on the agenda comes from Finance Sub as well?
Yes, it does. Back on July 27th, school committee approved $53,000, again, from the school choice account to fund a laundry list of instructional materials, BAS materials, online reading software. The last item on the list was for a Words Their Way instructional materials, which is a word study curriculum for grades 3 through 5. Fortunately, the price that was listed, or the funding that was listed, was $6,500, and when the quotes came back, it came in at $11,675. So there would be there's a request for an additional $5,175 to purchase this curriculum material for grades 3 through 5. And again, it would be coming from the school choice account.
And this is recommended by Finance Sub?
Yes, this was also recommended by Finance Sub at their August 26th meeting.
Okay, so can I have a recommendation, or a motion from Finance Sub?
I'll make a motion.
You'll move what Tom
Okay.
said,
I'll,
right?
I'll make a motion to say what Tom.
I move on the recommendation of Finance Sub to appropriate $5,175 to fund the purchase of the Words Their Way curriculum for grades 3 through 5.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'm assuming administration is still proposing it with the additional cost.
Yes.
And how much
It's
money
part
is
of our
left in school
literacy.
choice?
That was my next question. That was
So,
my next question.
ballpark, I'd say it's about $320,000.
It's pretty healthy.
A school committee some years ago developed some guidelines about balances they would like to see in the revolving accounts, and I believe $250 was the recommended balance that they would like to see that fund have.
That was the recommended minimum balance, right?
Minimum balance, correct, thank you. So there is still approximately 70,000 above, 75,000 above the minimum balance.
And this has been pretty stable over the years. the
Yeah,
school choice number.
it's been up and down, depending.
But it hasn't dipped below 250 in a while.
It has not below 250. We were up there for a while. We did spend some money right at the end of last year buying a number of curriculum materials, textbooks, and so on. So, but that's ballpark. We haven't closed FY15 yet, but based on
Okay.
a report back from, I want to say it was like mid-July.
We'll want to have enough in that for the kindergarten, preschool
Playscape, yeah.
And the
You're thinking
teachers,
ahead to kindergarten.
and the teachers are on board with this,
It's a soft rollout this
Component.
year. It's the goal was to get first and second rolled out with a word study, and 3, 4, and 5 was this year. So they'll be rolling it out this year and really committing to it the following.
But there are pieces that they can't, we need to order that they don't have yet.
Nobody has much of
Like they-
anything, right? We're
right.
waiting till tonight to order tomorrow.
That's why we brought it to tonight's meeting. That was specifically for something else. We would normally do this at a normal agenda, but we said we
Right.
need to get the
Thank you
teachers these
for doing that.
materials.
Appreciate it, yeah.
and so it is something that they'll be able to implement this year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous.
Is that it?
That's all that was on the
That's all
agenda.
for this evening, but.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I'll take that in a second, but just wanted to remind everyone that our next meeting is on a Tuesday, September 15th at 7 PM here. So different date, wanted to make sure everybody was aware, and now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'm gonna
I
tell.
move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Hey, Michael, you can, or maybe it's Janet.
It's notify me.
You can go right onto the town's website.
Yeah.
Yep,
And you can
sign up for
sign
what
up.
you want to be notified for.
Yep.
Chad, just let you know, I shared you on a Google Doc.
We're at
So,
the soccer
I'm just gonna
field
update that. and
somewhere else.
It'll be in real time.
Oh.
And then